Hello and welcome to Reason News. In a dramatic turn in the Middle East, President Donald Trump has announced that Iran and Israel have agreed to a complete and total ceasefire, bringing an end to nearly 2 weeks of intense conflict that threatened to engulf the region. The ceasefire, which Trump says is already in effect, follows a final barrage of missile strikes and urgent diplomatic efforts involving multiple world leaders. President Trump made the announcement late Monday, writing on social media, quote, "It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire. Refrain from violating," unquote. The president praised both nations for what he called the stamina, courage, and intelligence to conclude what should be referred to as the 12-day war. Trump indicated that the ceasefire would begin in a phased manner, with Iran halting its attacks first, followed by Israel, and an official end to hostilities to be marked 24 hours after the announcement. The ceasefire comes after a final deadly exchange. Just hours before the agreement took effect, Iran launched multiple missile barrages into southern Israel, resulting in at least 4 deaths in Beersheba, the first Israeli fatalities since Trump's ceasefire declaration. Israeli officials reported that 6 missile barrages were fired by Iran, while Iran's foreign ministry confirmed these were their last strikes, provided Israel ceased its operations. Eyewitnesses in southern Israel described hearing explosions and air raid sirens right up until the ceasefire deadline. The ceasefire was the result of intense behind-the-scenes diplomacy. According to White House officials, President Trump personally facilitated the agreement in calls with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Qatar's Prime Minister played a key role in persuading Tehran to accept the deal, while U.S. Vice President JD Vance and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff coordinated communications with both sides. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that Iran would halt its military response if Israel ended what Tehran described as illegal aggression against Iranian people. Here's a video from CBS News detailing more about the ceasefire.
It reflects, I think, what we saw earlier in terms of the retaliation from the Iranians. They took 5 days to respond to the targeted killing of Qasem Soleimani during the first Trump administration, in which they launched ballistic missiles at our bases in Iraq. But there was a small number, no one was hurt or killed, and President Trump made the decision not to respond at that time. So I think they took that into account when they looked at what happened, and they wanted an off-ramp for the crisis here, but they needed to save face. So they launched a number of missiles earlier today that corresponded, according to them, to the number of bombs that were dropped on the Iranian nuclear sites. There was a heads up given to the Qataris ahead of time, which was then, communicated to the United States. And as a result of that, they were shot down. There were no injuries. So it was clear they wanted an off-ramp for the U.S. The Israeli Defense Forces had previously stated that they would be looking for an off-ramp if Iran was willing to do so. And it looks like now behind closed doors that they've agreed to that, and it should take place around midnight Eastern. So all in all, today's events point towards a de-escalation and off-ramp that the Iranians have agreed to.
Alex, looking back over the weekend, why was this Operation Midnight Hammer important for the U.S.? And now with this potential ceasefire, from a mission standpoint, was it a success?
So it's yet to be seen whether or not it's a success. There are some mixed reports as to whether or not the Fordo facility, the deep buried one, was completely destroyed. That was built specifically to withstand a conventional military strike on purpose because it was a clandestine program. So it was important to be done for a few reasons. Once the decision was made to go ahead and start conducting military operations, which the Israelis did and notified the U.S., they kind of got halfway through. And if you notice the nuclear targets, they left Fordo until the end for a reason. The only way to really penetrate and actually destroy the underground facilities in Fordo would be using what we call a massive ordnance penetrator, or an MOP, that would be dropped from a B-2 stealth bomber. And so the other options would have been conventional bombing from the Israelis and potentially a follow-on ground raid by commandos, which would have been extremely dangerous. You could have had folks that were either kidnapped or, death and injuries, and then perpetuate the conflict. And I think when the Iranians decided they weren't going to negotiate in good faith, the IAEA came out with reports suggesting that the Iranians were engaging in clandestine weapons activity. The president, I think, decided he was not going to let this continue in perpetuity. And instead of risking it going on, he was going to finish it to the extent that was possible now. And so the decision was made to strike.
Trump's announcement outlined a phased process. Iran would stop firing first, Israel would follow 12 hours later, and after 24 hours, an official end to the 12-day war would be recognized by the world. Both sides have agreed to remain peaceful and respectful during each phase. The ceasefire comes after a conflict that saw hundreds killed in Iran and at least 24 in Israel, with major damage to military and civilian infrastructure on both sides. As of this broadcast, neither Israel nor Iran has issued an official statement confirming the agreement, though Iranian officials have signaled a willingness to halt attacks if Israel reciprocates. Israeli officials, according to local media, have told U.S. counterparts that they intend to conclude operations soon, and Prime Minister Netanyahu has instructed ministers not to comment publicly until the situation stabilizes. International observers note that both sides appear to be adhering to the ceasefire for now, though military readiness remains high in the region. The announcement has brought relief to world leaders and financial markets. The United Nations and European Union have welcomed the news, urging all parties to respect the ceasefire and begin talks for a longer-term resolution. Markets responded positively. U.S. stock futures rose and oil prices fell to their lowest levels in over a week as fears of a broader regional conflict and energy supply disruptions eased. The 12-day conflict began with Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, followed by waves of Iranian missile and drone attacks on Israeli cities and U.S. bases in Iraq and Qatar. The violence escalated rapidly, with both sides suffering casualties and significant infrastructure damage. President Trump's administration played a central role in brokering the ceasefire, with support from Qatar and other regional actors. While the ceasefire is holding for now, experts caution that the situation remains fragile. Neither Iran nor Israel has issued a formal confirmation, and both militaries remain on high alert. Analysts say the ceasefire is likely to hold in the short term, given Iran's vulnerable position and Israel's stated objectives, but warn that a long-term peace will require sustained diplomatic engagement and security guarantees for both sides. The end of active hostilities is a major relief for the Middle East and the world. Humanitarian agencies are preparing to assess the damage and respond to urgent needs in both countries. The international community, led by the US, EU, and Gulf states, is expected to push for follow-up talks aimed at preventing a return to violence and addressing the underlying issues, including Iran's nuclear program and regional security arrangements. President Trump's announcement that Israel and Iran have agreed to a complete and total ceasefire marks the end of a dangerous 12-day conflict that threatened to spiral into a wider regional war. The ceasefire, brokered with the help of US and Qatari diplomacy, is already in effect, though both sides remain cautious. The world now watches to see if this truce will hold and whether it can serve as a foundation for lasting peace in the Middle East. We will continue to bring you updates and expert analysis as this story develops. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, stay informed, stay updated, and stay curious.